Hey everybody, welcome to episode 53 of the AskDAP show, where we answer your Volkswagen Audi questions. On this episode, we answer a bunch of Mark 7 questions.
Dominic Rodriguez via Facebook says, if I take a peek into the oil pan for any reason, do I need a new oil pan gasket? Is there any other precautions I need to take before doing this?
Dominic, when you remove your oil pan on your vehicle, in the Mark 7s, it actually has a gasket. There's a channel that's actually cut into the pan itself to accept a gasket. I would suggest replacing that gasket whenever you do so, and here's why. Whenever you are taking off an oil pan, obviously you have to drain all the oil out of the car, and then obviously refill the oil once you're done. If you do so and if you reuse the original pan gasket and you have an oil leak, first you're going to lose a bunch of oil. Oil is not cheap, and not to mention you're going to have to drain it back out, which, depending on if you have a good method to save new oil and then reuse it once you have good oil that you know is actually in the engine, and you're going to be able to pour that back in when you're done in a clean method. If you don't have it, then you're going to have to buy all new oil too. So I would suggest doing that. Now, I don't know why you would want to go into the oil pan for any reason, unless you were to be doing some work in the bottom end, in which case you're going to be rebuilding the engine anyway. But I guess maybe you just want to check it out. I don't know. Also, someone mentioned about RTV on this. I would definitely not recommend using RTV. Anytime there is an original gasket, I do not recommend using RTV in conjunction with the gasket. The video, we actually did a DIY video on replacing the plastic pan for Mark 7s with a steel pan, which I'll link to that steel pan here where you can check that out. But in that one, we actually used RTV for installing it. But the oil pan that we use, the steel pan, is actually intended to be used with RTV. So that is a factory, that's not a factory pan, but it's from a factory style pan that originally on other cars that was intended to use sealant on it as opposed to a gasket. So really the key is always use the correct thing as the part was intended to be used with. So a lot of times if you goop a bunch of RTV on something that was intended to have a gasket, number one, it could leak, which is one problem by itself, but then it could also ooze into the oil pan, and then you end up getting RTV in the oil pump pickup and a bunch of stuff. So I always recommend using specifically what's intended for the vehicle.
SDF4786K via YouTube says, hey Paul, great video as usual. Will there be plans to do a video of stock GTI to Clubsport parts?
So we don't plan to do any video on Clubsport parts. For anybody who's not familiar, the Mark 7 GTI has a Clubsport edition. There's a Clubsport S edition that just set some track records at the Nürburgring for front-wheel drive cars. There are some interesting parts on those cars, most notably the front bumper and then the spoiler on the roof. We have looked into some of these. We actually have some front bumpers coming, and the front bumper on the Clubsport is pretty cool because not only is it just the bumper, which is aesthetically nice looking, but it also has a bunch of ducting that runs through the bumper, through the vents on the bumper, into the sides of the bumper, and then through the fender liners, and run brake ducting for cooling to the brake calipers and stuff like that. We have all that stuff coming from Europe currently. We don't really have ETAs on that stuff yet. But the duckbill wing on the back of the Clubsport is also something that is often talked about, and we don't have any of those coming, and here's why. They are absurdly expensive. Just an initial glance at what the total parts to make those things up are going to be roughly around 16, 17, 1800 bucks by the time it's all said and done. Because, and I assume it must be because there's something unique or because they're really rare, but the front bumpers aren't that expensive relative to the cost of that spoiler. So we did get some of those front bumpers. We don't have any of the duckbills. We can special order them for anybody who's interested, but when you're talking about a $1,800 spoiler for a car that still has to be painted and installed, you're getting pretty expensive to install a spoiler on the trunk of your vehicle. And there's a lot of other options out there, like the Ottinger one, which is a popular one that we sell, which I'll link to here, where you can check that out. That one's a pretty cool looking spoiler, and could be an option as a replacement if you're looking for a roof spoiler for a GTI.
Aversas via YouTube says, my question is, if I get a tune package like APR on my Mark 7 R, does that put excessive wear on the turbo, and can that lead to the early demise of the turbo?
Okay, so this question, I think I've covered some version of this before, but probably not directly. Does a tune, and you said APR, but this pretty much applies to all tunes, does a tune put extra wear on the turbo, causing potential premature failure? Technically, the answer is yes, because obviously, anytime you put out a lot more power out of something like a turbo, there is potential that it's going to shorten the life of it. Now, how much is going to be a big question mark, because nobody really knows. So, the answer is yes. Anytime, and we've probably covered this to death, but anytime you're modifying a car, you should be prepared for any of the potential failure implications of doing so. Most of them are pretty minute relative to the total number of vehicles out there that are modified. There are some failures of things, but they're not the majority of the vehicles. So the simple answer is yes. There is going to be some sort of shortening of the life, and it's generally not going to be something that I wouldn't feel comfortable offering something like that. Obviously we're a Unitronic dealer. I wouldn't feel comfortable offering their software if I felt like the car would last only 30,000 miles because of it, and then it would blow up. So, I think that pretty much applies to most tuners, that they're going to have that type of stuff. Some tunes are a little more aggressive than others, so that's something that you may want to consider when you're making that decision. If you are concerned more about that, you might want to go more on the conservative end. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
Robert Shetson via YouTube says, if my local dealer does APR, ECU, and DSG flashes, will it still void my warranty?
Okay, so this is another question. I think I've covered this before, but I don't think I answered this question directly. I just indirectly covered it in something else I answered. But bottom line is, does getting your software done by a dealership, VW or Audi dealership, prevent you from voiding your warranty? The basic answer is no, absolutely not. And here's why. Performance software, whether it be from any company, APR, Unitronic, Garrett, Revo, any of them, they are third-party companies. They do not have any direct relationships with VW. Some of them do have inter-relationships where they work in conjunction with the manufacturer in certain instances. But as a general rule, they do not have a relationship when it comes to warranty. So keep in mind, whenever you go to a dealership, the dealership is not the one that backs your warranty. Volkswagen of America does. So because of that, the dealership doesn't have the right to tell you that your vehicle is covered under warranty. And when I was at the dealer, I was one of the first dealers in the US, not the first, but one of the first few to offer software to our customers. And when I was doing that, I often had a lot of people who dealt with customers who would not properly explain to the customers what the implications of warranty related to software was. So like they would often come and say, oh, because you guys are selling it to me, that means it's covered under warranty, right? And that's not the case, and it doesn't work that way. If it worked that way, then obviously every dealer would offer software, and that's why dealers have been so scared of software for so long. It really boils down to just dealers not properly understanding it. Most of the people who you talk to don't understand all the implications of that. Generally, obviously, dealers who sell software are going to be more receptive to dealing with warranty issues around software. They're not super concerned about it. But it doesn't mean that you're covered under warranty. There are plenty of circumstances that might come that you would have to potentially have avoided warranty on a particular repair due to that instance. So, and also keep in mind, any of those dealers that you're working with anyway are going to be receptive to software anyway, whether you buy it from them or not, because they can't obviously talk out of both sides of the mouth. Oh, you have software in your car because you didn't buy it from us, and now you have a warranty implication. That's not the way that works. So hopefully that answered your question, but understand that dealers selling you software, they would have to actually physically give you a contract to back the warranty saying that your car is covered. And unless you're getting something in writing from the dealer who's selling you that software that says your warranty is still 100% intact, anything that isn't covered by Volkswagen America, we will cover, which I'm quite certain you're not going to get. That would be the only scenario in which they would have everything covered.
VW Rook via VW Vortex says, I have an APR Stage 2 tune on my MK7 GTI, and my perception is that the power comes on really strong and all at once. I don't know how I feel about the drivability and would consider other options if there was something else that might suit my needs better. I'm hoping for linear and smooth power.
So this question was actually asked to me, and the question was much longer than this, and I turned it into a paraphrase because I felt like this was a question that I could answer and also touch on a few things. I answered a question on the last AskDAP that was asking about somebody who was talking about switching software. And I wanted to touch on a few things because in that video, there was somebody who commented, and I think he had good intentions. He kind of was talking about how the perception could have been that we were biased in trying to convince people of something specific to keep their software instead of switching to another software because they already had Unitronic and we're a Unitronic dealer. And so his concern was he thought that people would think that we had a biased opinion. So here's the deal. When it comes to all these questions, obviously we are a business, but on the same token, these questions are things I'm answering to help people in the community. And I'm acutely aware that if I answer them in any biased way, that is going to shine through in all of the questions that I answer. Now, no question at some point someone will accuse me of being biased in the way I answer a question. Any question I answer is always going to be my opinion to the best of my ability and knowledge. Am I going to have mistakes that I make or things that I say that aren't completely thought through when I do it? Because obviously when I make these videos, I don't really rehearse and practice. I take a question, I answer it to the best of my ability, and then we put it out there. So, but here's the deal with this. So this customer has software. Doesn't matter what software it is, that happens to be APR. And he actually was specifically asking me about switching to Unitronic. And here's the deal. The same rules apply to this that I said apply to the other person who wanted to switch from Unitronic. And that's basically this. Let me start by talking about his issue. So he's mentioning the way that power is delivered. On that particular car, he's talking about how basically the power comes on really strong and just feels like it's just all at once and really hard and very aggressive. And every tuner is going to have different strategies in the way they tune cars. So APR does, from my knowledge, it tends to be a little bit on the aggressive side in the way they have boost and obviously the way they put the power on. Unitronic, the way they do it is torque by gear. And so on a GTI, because you have torque by gear, the power is not going to be torque all immediate. So it's going to come on a lot slower, which is better for traction, but also doesn't give you that same like really aggressive feel that you would get with a tune that puts all the power on fast. So, you know, that's really a matter of preference. I'm not going to tell you that one is better than the other because everybody's going to have to make the decision for themselves what they feel like is the best choice for them. And that really rings true with this, the same as the last question I answered on the last episode talking about switching. Because I don't generally recommend switching from one tuner to another because I don't think it's worth the money unless, and this is what I said in the last time, unless the drivability that you have concerns about in this gentleman's situation, talking about the power delivery, unless that's such a deal breaker that you're willing to switch. And, you know, we're talking about a significant investment to switch from one tuner to another. So you need to really not like what you have, no matter what tune it is, whether it's APR, Unitronic, or Evo, or Garrett, or whatever. You have to really not like that to want to switch to another tuner. And so as mentioned last time, I've heard a lot of people over the years who they take their car, they take it on they get flashed, they take it on a dyno, it doesn't put out the numbers that they've seen from XYZ person on their XYZ scenario, and then they want to switch to a different tuner. And you know, again, I don't recommend that. If you feel like whenever your drivability issue is a deal breaker for you, then you should do what you feel like is best for you. And if that's switching to a new tune, cool. If not, that's great too. But always, 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 when it comes to modifying cars, make the best choice you feel like is for yourself, and go from there. You know, I firmly believe, and I said this last time and I'll say it again, I firmly believe that most people will be better off just spending that money instead of on a new tune. Spend it on an intercooler or some other upgrade related to that are going to get you more power instead of trying to chase a different tune to get a little bit more power. You know, now the drivability thing is probably one concern that I think may lead you to want to do it. And you know, I don't care if you want to switch from Unitronic to APR. You know, the last comment was mentioned that because I was a Unitronic dealer that I could be biased to tell somebody to not switch when, first of all, whether they bought software from us or not, it doesn't matter because they already bought it from us. So if they switch to APR from Unitronic software, most likely they didn't buy it from us. That's first. But if they did buy it from us, once you've paid us for software, you can't unpay us when you switch to somebody else. So for that reason, I want everybody to understand that every question I answer in a way that I know that this video is on the record forever. 100% forever. This isn't going away unless we delete it, but I have no intention of deleting anything. So I answer every question as if it is on the record forever because it absolutely is. And I'm not going to tarnish my personal reputation over doing something to make an extra buck or two here or there. Obviously, anybody who supports our business through purchases, I really appreciate that, and that means a lot to me. But that doesn't mean I'm going to trick people into doing so. So hopefully that answers your question and gives you an idea of what you can make the best, how you can make the best choice to make the decision for yourself. Thank you for watching episode 53 of the AskDAP show, where we answer your Volkswagen Audi questions. If you have any comments about the questions answered in this show, be sure to leave in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it.